say when you're younger, you like are having sex with some woman, and you decide to go into kind of your more like masculine desire, like I'm gonna really ram her kind of thing.
Sure.
And the woman's like, oh, I don't like that. I just feel like I'm a piece of meat. And so you're like, oh, that thing I did was bad. Sorry, sweetie. I didn't mean to be such a horrible, toxic male to you. Okay, so there's that experience.
Sure. Yeah.
And then later you have a experience with a different woman, and she's like, ram me, and you go into this male thing, and she's like, yes, I love that thing. Do more. And you're like, whoa,
absolutely,
that's weird.
Yeah.
You get very different responses from different people. And then sometimes, and I bet this is a common thing in male sexual development, is when you meet the woman that really loves and embraces and invites this powerful masculine sexual assertion, you're like, yes, I like this. I want to have sex with this woman more and more and more, and kind of having sex with her and having her really embrace your masculinity, or embrace your shameful boner, or embrace your whatever, is like healing for the man.
We now bring you Enter the Freud.
This is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice.
All right. So as promised, we're going to enlighten the world about what is mature male sexuality. All right, world, get ready to be enlightened.
And how to get there? What were the potential stages? I swear to God, everyone who tries to talk about this just ends up into a world of pitfalls and pathology. That's it. There is no celebration of the coolest shit as it goes on.
Oh, I like that. I like that spin, taking a much more positive approach.
Fuck yeah. Well, particularly if in the end it's rad, or along the way there's super cool parts. I don't like this obsession of just like, oh, all men need sexual healing because of the way that, dude, I swear to God, if you listen to any sex therapist, that is what they're going to say. They're going to say, because men are raised in a way where they're disconnected from their feelings, and they fuck like porn, and so then they have issues with, and on and on and on and on and on it goes.
Totally. Yeah.
And that strange obsession. Okay. Can I tell you the weirder part of where my brain went as soon as I thought about this? Okay. Yeah, this is fucking weird, because it's like when you listen to people talk about male sexuality, they usually start at like 14 to 17. I was struggling to like, I had all these sexual desires, and I couldn't figure out how to actualize them with a partner, gay or straight or fucking Wolfarian or whatever it is, right? Like that's where people start, but then this is where our talk right now is going to be different than anyone I've ever heard, and we fucking say this every time, but this part is real. Watch. Like, okay, if that's who you are at 17, then you're profoundly disconnected from your own feelings and your ability to be empathic to others, right? Gay, straight, whatever you are. But then the journey of sexuality turns out that, oh, wow, in the end, you have all this intense connection, and then sex isn't even about the physical act anymore. It's now some yogic thing where it's through eye contact, and you do secret like voodoo, loo. And I'm like, okay, wait, let's back up, right? Because like, it's hard for me to remember unless I regress back to when I was a little person, way before puberty. I had like an incredible capacity to connect to other human beings and other animals, other ideas of the world. I felt very connected.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then when I look at my kid who is prepubescent, and I see he's massively connected. He's extremely empathic in the way that he talks to his friends. He's very concerned about what they're saying. Are they in support of his ideas?
Yep.
Like, and so then I see this as a strange disconnect where we can all see that young people have an incredible capacity to be connecting. They're affectionate, although it's not sexual, right? They crave physical contact.
Yeah.
They crave it and seek it out. And then this what the metamorphosis of physical puberty happens. You become sexually mature, and then what? Suddenly you become retarded. What? We're not supposed to use that word. No, you become what? Autistic? You become some form of Asperger's? That's what they're saying, and I don't like it.
Okay, so what's your view that is in contrast to that?
So I think that this idea of like hyperpathologizing men in I literally heard some people talk shit like, okay, you have your brain and then you have your gut brain, and your gut brain has as many neurons as a cat's brain. Oh, right? It's super sophisticated what it does. And then your heart has a brain, right? There's so many neurons that are involved with informing your heart what to do, and it informs everything else, how it's doing. But then you have your fucking dick brain, your cock brain. And this is where shit falls off the rails again. They're like, oh, well, if you're in touch with your heart brain and you have connection with that, that's an incredible thing. If you're in contact with your gut and the gut information, you have this holistic impact on the world. But if you're in touch with your cock, then your other brain shuts off. And so you, like once you start thinking with your dick, then you become like a crude caveman. And that's a stereo. Where did that start? How long has that shit been going on? That kind of talk. And is there really support for that? Really?
What, that like if you think with your little head, you can't think with your big head, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Is there any actual support to this claim? Kind of reminds me of the daddy issues talk we had. Like,
well, it's also similar to the boner shame talk. Okay, but so to like do the devil's advocate thing to understand your point, here's the typical small head, big head argument is that men, they just get horny and then they just go want to have sex by any means necessary, whether it's like just to try to like catcall and try to get any random chick to have sex with them or to rape them or to whatever. Like, it's just like they just become so obsessed with having sex that they like lose their minds, and that's a super common thing. So that's the conventional argument for this, right?
Yeah, something like that. Something like it. But then this immediately contradicts itself once you get into the idea of what is a man supposed to do once he embraces his sexuality. It's like, oh yeah. Well, all like sexuality is actually in your head. It's this like large concept. And then shit gets so weird okay, I like to point out other people's stupidity. I don't know why. Maybe it makes me feel better about my own ideas. But this idea that sexuality is kind of like if you don't understand wine like a sommelier, then you don't and you treat sex in a way that is not like a sommelier, then you don't know what sex is. Like, you're not allowed to just be like, I prefer red over white. Like, which reds do you prefer? I don't know so much. Like, not the sweet ones. But I like, like, that is not an okay way to view sexuality in this. Once we get into the discussion of what is male sexuality, and you're not allowed to just say like, I prefer this type.
And you're saying there's like all these people out there that are kind of doing this critique of male sexuality, that like men need to learn to become more sophisticated and nuanced and complex in their sexuality.
Yes, to the point where they're like, men should bring dildos into the bedroom. They shouldn't be freaked out if the woman wants to use it on their ass. Like, I fucking heard these sex therapists talk like that. Dude. and I'm like, well, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that this description of mature sexuality is actually mature.
So for our next week's video, you and I can demonstrate how to get comfortable with a dildo in your butthole. We can start off, we can tickle each other's butts with dildos and then slowly ram and talk about different lubes. And
there's a guy who runs a sex workshop who then puts a dildo in his own mouth to show, I don't know who the fuck he's showing, because he's claiming to be straight. He claims to be straight, but then he gives like blowjob instructions to people. I don't know if he's like, hey guys, here's how you want someone to suck your dick. Or, dude, I don't know. The main point you're making here is like, can everyone stop fucking telling men that their sexuality is bad? And can we just let men have their own sexual desires and their own sexual behaviors and just like do their own thing and like accept that that's just perfectly fine and natural? That's kind of your main point. It's kind of my main point. And it's like, if what you achieve by the end of your life in your romantic pursuits is something like, oh, I prefer Italian looking women, and I want to have sex with them in this way, and I like it when the experience goes in a particular sequence, and that's my favorite. I'm willing to do whatever they want. I'll soldier up to whatever it is, whatever you prefer. This is what I like, and is that okay? Is that enough? Or is it like, oh, well, that's like a junior high level of sexual understanding. Yeah. Unless you embrace the tantric techniques, and then you do the full Kama Sutras, 100 and how many positions are in there? When I was a kid, I remember going over to this kid's house, and his parents had like the Kama Sutra on the bookshelf. I remember just like looking at it and just being like, look at these fucking poses. Like, they were like impossibly pretzeled up to do. And it's like, really? Are we like, is the job not done until all of those have been perfected?
Right, totally.
Right?
Okay, so your basic point is that like, if the dude has his Italian wife, he did a study abroad in Italy and met this cute Italian lady, and they got married, and every Friday night at 8:30 p.m., they have sex missionary position, and first thing is she sucks his dick, and then he has sex with her missionary, and then he goes down on her, and then he does her doggy style, and they both come, and they're both happy, and they both go to sleep, and they do that same exact thing every Friday night for their whole lives, and they're perfectly happy. That you're basically saying everyone should leave them the fuck alone and let them enjoy their thing, and just like, let's all just affirm that thing is cool, they like it, it's cool.
Yes, exactly. That would be totally okay as long as they're happy and they like it and that's what they want.
Right.
That's it.
I agree with that, but let's challenge this a little. How about the dude who he goes home and he's lonely as fuck and he molests his dog and then masturbates to child porn and then hates himself, and so he cuts himself, and then that's his sexual life.
What the? Yeah, okay. Well, so you went as far as you could into the world of true like psychic disturbance.
Right. So someone, whatever, if he's happy with it, fine, except maybe it's not fair to his dog, and maybe it may, and if the child porn, maybe that's not okay, but he's probably not happy with it, so we could maybe provide some constructive critiques to this guy, right?
Yeah, I would prefer we'd take like a real example from our actual clinical experience. Because
yeah, good.
I don't think I would be able to deal with that guy.
Yeah,
I would be like, all right, I can't do whatever the fuck your issues are. It's outside of my realm. Like, you got to go see those other sex therapists that are gonna want you to suck on the dildo and whatever those things were.
Well, and the child porn thing, I've never had to deal with that. I don't know if that like is a confidentiality breaking ethical violation thing. Let's not even open that fucking can of worms.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so forget about that horrible hypothesis I came up with. Okay, so can you
delete that?
delete? We'll edit that fucking thing out. Can you? Do you have I can try to think. I've had tons of examples over there. Can you think of any examples?
Of what? Of somebody
who maybe to give them some constructive criticism is a good thing to do.
Okay, yes. I can give you an example of somebody who ended up with that exact same scenario of every Friday or Saturday night, they would have sex in a missionary position with the lights off. And as a result of this gradual trend occurring, because first they started out when they first got together, they would have sex in all various ways, exploring stuff. But then over time, someone said, I feel fat, turn the lights off. And so then the lights always stayed turned off. And then they tried to have sex on Tuesday one time and she didn't want to. And so they end up in this thing where they're doing the same thing as the Italian couple, but they're very unhappy with it. And they seem to point to it as if that's the source of their relationship problems.
Yep.
And so then they have an issue of trying to figure out, well, what is our new relationship to sexuality going to be? How are we going to crack out of this pattern that we've gotten into? But then this is where sexuality is not just the act of having sex in the bedroom. And then this is something I need to explore with you because I don't know the answer, right? It's like, is it really like what they say about yoga and meditation, that you do the practice, blah, 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 long time, and then eventually everything in your life is your practice?
Yeah.
From waking day to all the way to sleep is your practice. So then could we say that about sexuality? Could we say that like all things are sexuality? No one would say that, because then it's like, oh, well, when you go and you hug your grandma, is that sexuality? And then
no one wants to say that particular thing.
No, nobody does. But like, then it's because sexuality is what? Is it dirty? Is what? Why wouldn't we say that? It's like
I think you're onto something here, and my mind was going the same place, which is if you start to try to describe what is mature, healthy sexuality, you can't ignore how it connects just to mature, healthy capacity for relationships.
Yep.
Like capacity for intimacy, capacity for play with another person. And then you can't, to do that, you really can't neglect seeing how it's just part of mature, healthy psychology in general.
Yeah.
If we're just trying to talk about, positions or doing it, it's like we're really missing the boat. You have to start to go into mature, healthy relating with other humans. And to have mature, healthy relating with other humans, you have to have just mature, healthy psychology yourself. And so sexuality, it's not everything, but kind of like Venn diagrams, like it definitely exists within healthy relationships, which exists within healthy psychology.
Okay, so then where does this... It's almost like we're starting from the end and then going to work backwards. Because remember, what we promised was we would be like, here's what healthy male sexuality is, right? Because right now we're just talking about sexuality as a human being. We're going to then have to focus on specifically what is it about dudes, and then work backwards. And I almost feel like this is a story of dispelling like heinous mythology about men. That's almost
totally. Okay, totally. Okay, so let's just start with there's some big general things. You're right. It's just about humans, not about men. And then let's get to the men. Okay, so some big main points is to have healthy, mature sexuality as a human, you have to be able to, and I don't think anyone gets there. I think you need to work higher and higher, and I don't know if anyone's ever gotten to 100%, but it's like security with yourself. Your security with your body, security with your needs, security with your ability to communicate your needs to other people, acceptance of your own desires and needs and sexuality. Okay, so that whole thing is necessary. And that's kind of a tall order. And I think that's why when we think about adolescents not having mature sexuality, it's just because they don't really know themselves and they haven't become really secure in themselves yet. And so you can't really do mature sexuality if you haven't gotten pretty comfortable and secure and accepting of yourself.
Can I throw in a caveat there? Like, what about those young people who are very, very secure in their connection and they are confident in their ability to be close to others?
Then I think that they can do it. Like, okay, and then, but hold on, going along with that, because it's related to what we're talking about, is you also have to have this sensitivity and respect for other people. So this ability to tune into other people and talk to them and be interested and open to their needs and their feelings and their things. So it's like this, I gotta be in touch with and secure in me, and I gotta be in touch with and respectful and curious about you. And that, so you got to hold these two kind of opposite things and then bring yourself into relation to another who you're attuned and respectful to. I feel like that's like the main big foundation that's true for men and women. And I think probably a lot of critiques of male sexuality is a criticism that men aren't attuned to others, that they're just more narcissistic.
Absolutely. That is absolutely I think that's the biggest criticism about male sexuality, and it comes from that endless idea that masculinity itself is stoic. It is, young boys are trained to not speak about their emotional states. They don't identify their emotions, and therefore they are incapable of this kind of contact, which is not fucking true, right? So in many cases that is true. But then I want to point to what is up with those rare occasions where some young people have contact, their first kiss, the first time that they hook up, and it is magical. It's not traumatizing, right? It's not traumatizing. I hate that everyone starts the story with, oh, well, I lost my virginity and then it was traumatizing. And it's like, and I just hear so many guys talk like that, right? Like, oh, I did it because I was pressured, and then and it was all fucked up, and then I felt like a total creep, and then blah 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 blah, blah. Like, and then they live in this kind of like weird state. Versus like, what if the person, like once upon a time when I was like 14 or 15, I knew a girl who would want. She would want to kiss, and she was super fascinating in how just present she was in her ability. She's actually, I remember her as being more present than some women I meet today. Back then.
Yep.
Right?
So, yeah, I didn't ever think about this until you're bringing it up, but I have known people who are really comfortable and mature in sexuality at a young age. You're right. There are people. They're relatively rare.
I think that's true. They are,
but there are plenty of them. I know and have met enough that that there's millions of them in the world, so they're out there. It's a fairly small percentage.
Are some of them dudes?
Yes.
Fuck yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that I think is where we're probably going to be shamed and said, oh, well, how dare you speak about these 5% when 95% of men are suffering and they're Cro-Magnon in their ways and whatever argument. But I do think that the unique aspect of, well, if we're going to talk about the evolution of this, why not talk about it in the way that it is a success? Like your first kiss. Why would that be a success? Like, how does that work? If you kiss someone in a game of spin the bottle, and then the way that you two kiss leaves the two of you with just like wildly expanded imagination of like, oh, what is this world? What is this whole thing? Right?
Yep.
Would that be considered a success? Instead of like, oh, how shameful, like, what did we do? Oh, I can't look at this person.
Yeah. And if I look at myself, I think my story of sexuality maturation is probably a pretty common one. I think I'm a pretty average one. And so, when I was young and in high school, I was kind of shy and scared and didn't have much experience. And my first sexual things were oftentimes loaded with like anxiety and like, oh, and like I did it wrong kind of thing and blah, blah, blah. But when I look back on it from this lens you're taking, it's sort of like, but it was awesome. It's like so fascinating, exciting, and scary, and gripping, and charged with emotion, and it was all great. Actually, it's sort of like it's a beautiful story. It's a good movie if I look back on it.
If you look through this particular lens that we're talking about, and then if you look through in this lens, you can look at every time that your partner was somehow confused, let down, disturbed, right? Let alone how you fucking felt. Just pay attention to what they felt like through your history, and you can pick out a dozen situations where you're like, ooh, I fucked that up, or it did, like, something happened weird and that was weird, right? Or you could look through your history and then see like all the times where shit was like fantastic, and then you can see that both you and that person are in this glow, which turns into, this is what I think is really maybe defining of what mature sexuality is you become in a flow state. It's like you don't care about the performance of what happens next. Like, oh, well, next I'm gonna fucking do this, and next I'm gonna go and do what? What are you doing? No, in these states that happen with this type of contact, whatever we're gonna call it, just like real sexual contact, then maybe there isn't a need. Well, I don't really even know how to finish that concept. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, here's where my mind went when you said the flow state. I do think that I would say, at the risk of contradicting what I was just saying, I would say that as I've gotten older, sex has gotten better and better. And I don't know if maybe it's a little like apples and oranges to say that, because when you were young, sex was so fucking amazing in some ways,
Sure. Yeah.
But when you said the flow state, I think about times when sex gets into these like altered states of consciousness of like ecstasy or merger or bliss, or it can feel spiritual, or it can feel almost like artistic in some weird way.
Yeah.
And when you say flow states, I think of that, and I feel like I wasn't able to get into that maybe ever, or at least so much. The older I am, the more I'm able to get into that. And there's like these states with my girlfriend where I'll just like merge into this like blissful, intimate love thing. And it almost feels more like spiritual loving than just like physically erotic sex,
Yeah.
Or other, and there can be different ones. And it does feel like getting into that is fucking awesome, and I would want everyone to be able to get into that. And I don't know who can and who can't, but my younger self couldn't really. And so it would be a mistake for me to assume all young people can, because I think I'm wrong. I think there are some young people that are more advanced than me in this.
Yes, without a doubt. And how does that happen and why? Well, we don't know, right?
No.
We don't know. There would be, these people have to be of the secure attachment group. Their parents did something correct. They attuned to them. That may not be true, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's not true. We don't know who it is that would be somehow in this place. Like, I remember listening back in grad school, this French woman came to talk from Osho's, like, tantric sex cult. So she ran these giant group sex workshops, right? Where it was hundreds of people, they're all having sex, and it's like there's connective energy with everyone doing that, right? She comes in and her opening statement was that, well, the first time she had sex at maybe 16, it was somehow this like transcendent experience where her and the guy like merged and then went into this like actual transcendent, almost psychedelic state.
Yeah.
And so right then she knew this was her life's work, and she was ultimately in pursuit of understanding what had happened organically, right?
Yep.
Organically. So she is one of those specimens who...
Yep, totally.
And possibly the guy she had sex with is also one of them. And
Totally.
it's like that doesn't mean... that all of us have the need to then become someone who is, like that. This is where I struggle. Is
it gets back to this point of like, should we give constructive criticism? Back to the dude with his Italian wife, like. What works for him is cool, but maybe he's missing out on this transcendent flow thing, and he doesn't know it. And it would be helpful to him to be like, hey, dude, if you change these few things, you might be able to access this transcendent flow thing, and it might be really fucking cool.
Yeah. All right. I can agree with that.
And now let me take a stab at what it is. And I don't know, but here's my guess, just from my own experience, is I think it's these things I was saying about the need to feel secure in yourself, and then the need to feel attuned and curious and respectful of your partner, and to kind of have this foundational security. And so then if you're with a partner and you can really relax into this secure state, and then you can allow the like sexual, intimate, playful, erotic energy just to come up, and you can kind of surrender your normal ego or your planning or your whatever, and you can just like let that thing flow out of you, and then the other person's flow out of you. It feels like that's this thing that can open you up into this altered state of like ecstatic consciousness.
Yeah, okay. So then I think what you're talking about is that like super weird ability to, when you're with someone, see that they appreciate you, see that you appreciate them appreciating you, and then on and on. It's like an infinite mirror experience where it's like, and you, 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 and then you realize it's your heartbeats. Boom, 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 boom. And now you're in a fucking flow state. What is that? Like, what is, like, in that way, as you attend to the other person and you notice they're attending to you, and it's like this exchange that often doesn't occur in normal relating. It mostly happens in this kind of sexual coupling.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Although when you're saying it, it makes me think of other flow states. Like you often hear about athletes in a flow state, or musicians in a flow state, or artists in a flow state, or actors in like theater and drama in a flow state. And so here's my speculation. It's like when things kind of line up well, and sort of all the rules or the structure or the foundational things are in place. And then, so it's like for a musician, it's like you become so good at your instrument, at the music, that you can put aside the rules and like rise up to a higher level.
Yeah.
It seems like that's maybe that's a commonality in all these things.
I like that.
And that it's true in sex too. And it's like if there's this trust and intimacy and play, and you can set aside all the insecurities about I look fat or what do you want or and all the insecurities go, like the like erotic energy can just like come out and play, and it's just creative and transcendent and I mean I think sex probably has its own unique different flavor of flow state than athletics or art or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's something cool about the intimate collaborative nature of two people doing it together.
Yeah, there has to be something there is something so unique about that in comparison to a flow state of a musician or an athlete. Yes, I like the parallel that you draw for sure. So I just feel so endlessly protective of this idea that dudes then have to embark on this fucking journey to then like all become incredible musicians or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like we have to make a turn and be a little more specific to male sexuality. I think everything we've been saying is just about human sexuality. Okay, so here's one way that might get us into it. I've had this experience. I'm guessing it's fairly common for men who've had good sexual maturational experiences that say when you're younger, you like are having sex with some woman and you decide to go into kind of your more like masculine desire, like I'm going to really ram her kind of thing.
Sure.
And the woman's like, oh, I don't like that. I just feel like I'm a piece of meat. And so you're like, oh, that thing I did was bad. Sorry, sweetie. I didn't mean to be such a horrible, toxic male to you. Okay, so there's that experience.
Sure, yeah.
And then later, you have a experience with a different woman, and she's like, ram me. And you go into this male thing, and she's like, yes, I love that thing. Do more. And you're like, whoa,
absolutely.
That's weird.
Yeah.
You get very different responses from different people. And then sometimes, and I bet this is a common thing in male sexual development, is when you meet the woman that really loves and embraces and invites this powerful masculine sexual assertion, you're like, yes, I like this. I want to have sex with this woman more and more and more, and kind of having sex with her and having her really embrace your masculinity or embrace your shameful boner or embrace your whatever is like healing for the man. I've certainly have had that experience.
Yeah.
And I bet it's a pretty common experience with men. And all of us men, like when we find those women, we're like, yes, thank you. I fucking needed this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is pretty healing. And I don't know what the difference is, but some would actually say, really, they're like those who think that they are in the know about this would say that, yes, and that expression that you're doing is pornography informed. It's not gentle, paying attention to the other person. And so you should have known that other woman wasn't going to like it by attending to her softly and knowing and being patient and waiting for her to be the signal of passion and desire. But this is a totally female-centric view of sexuality. And there is a whole real talk about this, that women are the one who possess the passion, and if you can ignite that, then you have together this thing, and men are there as kind of a facilitator, blah, 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 right? But that's like, once again, that's a distraction from what we're talking about. Because
my thought is, and I could be wrong, but my thought is sex is just like two kids who get together to play, and the kids are like, hey, you want to play hide and seek? Sure. And they play hide and seek, and then one's like, I'm bored of hide and seek. Can we play checkers now? Okay. No, I don't want to play checkers. Can we do this? And it's just like, you just figure it out. And sometimes you get in a plaything that's really awesome for both. sometimes the plaything's really cool for one, but not that cool for the other. And when it's really bad for one, that one's like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's just like this natural process.
Yeah, okay.
And then mature sexuality, I think, is where you can bring all of your different play, erotic, intimate desire things to the table, and the other person brings theirs to the table, and then you decide what you want to do, and the ones that fit, you fucking go nuts and really do them, and the ones that don't match, you don't do those. But the good thing is when they match, and it's just like you just get to play that thing.
Yeah, I agree. And so then, like, this, I realize this entire talk, I'm just in reaction to, like, a line of criticism. And so that's fine. I'm just being transparent about that, right? I think it's actually helping inform this discussion about, well, if you are a guy who then figures out that, okay, well, certain positions and certain women don't like their cervix to be pounded, right? Some of them do. Some think that that's a fantastic thing. There are a lot of nerve endings on the cervix along with the clitoris and the opening of the vagina. And so some women actually are super into having their cervix stimulated by sex. And so like that, in that case, yes, they would like to have potentially like hard sex from the back or whatever you're going to do with your positioning, right? But then other women super don't like that.
Right.
It's just not their thing. That doesn't feel good to them. And so then you kind of have to like learn through this way of experience and like how are you supposed to do this because you kind of can't read books that will tell you this shit. Like you read the books and then it's like, then I don't think I ever read a book that said, hey, by the way, you're going to do these, you're going to try these things and the person isn't going to like it and then you'll feel rejected, but that's okay. You can then just talk about it. It doesn't have to be the end of an awkward thing that then you close the book and never talk about. Like, do you think that now, with the way that information is more accessible, that maybe young dudes like our boys growing up will potentially have messages that will allow them to be okay with the challenges, like being okay with if you fall down and get hurt playing sports, and okay with the fact that like you may fuck up on stage as a musician or whatever the thing is.
My guess is my son, and my guess would be the same for your son, is his path will be probably pretty similar to yours and mine. You know, I'm thinking it's gonna be pretty similar. And honestly, my path was great. Not that it wasn't perfect, and I had some shame or nervousness or whatever, and problems with this and that. But by and large, it was fucking great.
Do you think that the shame and the discomfort of difficult exchanges is necessary or important in guiding you to be able to attune to the other? Like, why do you think this happens to so many of us? Like, at some point, you're going to have a sexual experience that is not rad. Like, without a doubt, you're going to have one. For sure. Right?
Yep.
One or lots of them, depending on your...
Yeah, and you're going to be super embarrassed and have a lot of anxiety and shame or whatever.
Yeah, is that okay? And what if it's necessary? Because I obviously don't want my son to have to go through this. I would love to be able to be like, all right, kid, here's the deal. This, like, okay, you're trying to hook up with this girl. Okay, you don't have to worry about, like, the pressure that, okay, you guys have kissed, so now the next thing is you got a finger banger, dude. Like, like, that's the shit that we were all told, and I don't know if that is what is being said. I don't know what's going on today. And, like...
It does seem like it's different today.
Do they... Like, but what if this is just one of those things that people have to go through, and if they knew that it was okay? I just wish that that was something that I had more of going through this was, oh yeah, that's okay.
Totally.
Like, you guys were trying to do this thing, and for whatever reason, you both have hang-ups, and so it freaked you both out, and so you're like, okay, you know. If you looked forward in your life 2 years from now, you and that person who had the awkward thing, oh, well, now you have an incredible thing going on. Like, well, that would be great. And I still don't know what to do with the idea that that mature male sexuality is like a connoisseur of truffles and fucking like someone who's able to descry snobby teas and the first cut white Darjeeling or whatever the fuck people like snobby want to talk about. Like really, that's how you're going to talk about sex? Like, oh yeah, at this time of the month, her vagina is like, get the fuck out of here. Like,
well, I think part of the reason you're having such a strong reaction against that is it's counter to one of the primary things we've been talking about, which is that good sex or sexual maturity comes from really being accepting of yourself. Whereas this connoisseur thing is kind of the opposite. It's like your sexuality is not right unless you're doing the Darjeeling sexuality.
Yeah, that's right. That is what my fucking problem was. Thanks, man. That helps me out from my bind of otherwise casting out all so-called sex experts.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But yeah, so that's kind of one of the fundamental rules we're talking about is like just acceptance of all the wild, wacky, weird, or tender. I think tender and loving is probably an aspect of sexuality that a lot of men have trouble accepting. I was talking to my girlfriend about this, how one of my favorite things in sex is when I just get into this like super love merge thing with her. And it's just like, oh, we're so in love. She's so awesome. We're so awesome together. But it feels kind of like a tender, it sort of has a stereotypically woman kind of vibe.
That's pretty gay. That's pretty gay, Dave.
And my theory, I have no idea if this is true, is that there's probably a lot of men that don't let themselves just like open up into that thing.
Yeah.
And if that's true, I think they're fucking missing out.
Yeah. Like, well, I don't know if it's true that, like, what percentage of men are actually, but yes, definitely when we were of a certain age during the 90s, if you told your friends about that, there would be a resounding, that's gay, Dave.
Right, totally.
Like that would be what the categorical response would be. And that's just what we all said, but then secretly behind everyone's back, everyone was so mushy with their girlfriends, and you'd hear them all talking like in the other room, and you could hear all your boys like, "Oh, babe, you know." That's why I think like this idea that men are incapable and don't seek it out is kind of a front. I'm not sure like how much of it is real, and I still hold true that like that dudes are actually super in tune and trying really hard to be in contact and be great lovers